Okay. Chair Norton, are we ready for finance? I know, ready for that. What's that?
So let's all put some fun in that finance
Indeed.
today.
Take it away.
Okay. Visually impaired and deafblind. The motion for the board is that pending additional work and development of Rule R277801, that the board provide $300,000 to Tooele School District to allow for identified necessary services to their students by USDB, and that board staff coordinate with the legislature to ensure proper alignment of the funds for this purpose. And then the second part of that motion is to direct staff to work with board members and the legislature to request temporary funding for FTE needs for next year as we work toward a new formula long-term solution that aligns practice with current or potential code and meets the needs of those working and learning at USDB, the LEAs in the bottom 3 enrollment percentile, and the large LEAs with 3% or more of the public student population.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion to that motion? I see lights from Member Davis and Vice Chair Earl.
She was first.
Member Davis?
Well, I can speak more to this later. I just really quickly want to say that that 300,000 isn't actually going to go directly to Tooele. It's to help offset the FTE needs and costs. And I think it's up to 300,000. So just on the public record, I want to make that kind of understood that that's going in the whole 3% rule pot.
Got it. Thank you. Vice Chair Earl.
Yes, I just want to, I know we're not passing the rule here and it's kind of out in limbo land, and I've spoken with Member Davis about this and others, but I just want to make sure it's clear that there's a request for temporary funding. The chances of us getting that temporary funding are probably pretty slim to nothing, but through the legislature. And I just want to make sure this is public, that we need to make sure we have something in place in the spring of next year so that the USDB is not out on a limb without any funding for staff this year or next year or any other needs. So I'm just making sure I'm kind of saying that public so we make sure we follow through with that. So anyways.
Thank you. And I just want to thank and remind the public and our stakeholders of our USDB subcommittee. I think we're calling it officially a subcommittee of Vice Chair Earl, Member Wood, and Member Norton, who have been getting in the weeds and working through some of these issues with USDB so that we have more visibility and depth on these discussions. So appreciate that work, and that filtered into the discussion in finance. Any further discussion or questions to the motion? Member Wood.
I just have one question for the maker of the motion, if that's okay.
You bet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, but I might have to call a friend.
Okay. I was asked whether or not, when we talk about the requests that are coming in, are we working with those staff that are currently being employed by USDB at this point, or are we talking about future staff?
Phone a friend.
Deputy Jones. Thanks for the donuts, by the way.
No, you're welcome, sir. I'm here for you. So, Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. Chair, through you, if I understand Board Member Wood's question correctly, when she says requests, right? These specific requests here are just temporary requests that are being made that will help with FTEs to support Tooele, but it is one-time money. If I could maybe get a little bit more clarity on what request she's referring to. Is she referring to the request by the USDB for more FTEs, or which request is Board Member Wood referring to?
Member Wood, and I think I see another couple of potential commenters, but back to you.
Actually, I think in asking your question, you clarified my
Okay.
answer, so we're
Okay.
good.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Member Davis, did you have? Oh. All right, I think we have no other lights, so the motion is on the screen, pending additional work and development of Rule 277-801. I don't think I need to read all that, it's on the screen. I think we can. Is it not in the record? Did I not? I didn't restate up front, did I? Okay. Provide $300,000 to Tooele School District to allow for identified necessary services to their students by USDB, and the board staff coordinate with the legislature to ensure proper alignment of the funds for this purpose. 2, direct staff to work with board members in the legislature to request temporary funding for FTE needs for next year as we work toward a new formula long-term solution that aligns practice with current or potential code and meets the needs of those working and learning at USDB, the LEAs in the bottom 3 enrollment percentile, and the large LEAs with 3% or more of the public student population. Okay, please vote. I think it was a two-part single motion, as I recall, but we can clarify with the chair. Two-part single motion. Correct. I think the motion itself would govern, and I think as I see the motion itself, it's framed as a single motion in 2 parts. And I guess you're saying in the agenda amendment it might have described it otherwise.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's through you, Chair, to Board Member Bogus' concern. When the original memo for the Finance Committee last month was built, it was built around 2 distinct motions. One for the $300,000 for USDB to use to support Tooele, and the other one for the $700,000 for Medicaid. So she's reading that, I think, correctly, but I'm not sure under Robert's rules if you can't combine the motions, so.
Well,
Okay, one.
let's clarify
Okay,
how
one.
it came out
Yeah,
of committee then. You're
okay.
saying as one motion? Came out as one motion.
Yeah, it came out of committee as one motion, but it was originally 2 separate motions. is
Originally
my
2, but
understanding.
came out as one.
Yeah, okay.
What was passed in finance then was a single motion? All right, this is a good point. This is a good point of order, because if it was passed as 2, then we should bring it as 2.
I would move to divide. This is Board Member Klein.
Well, that might solve it, right? I mean, if there's confusion, I think the
Yeah.
question is what the Finance Committee actually passed, not so much what came into the committee or what was teed up in the backup, but what was actually passed by the committee is what governs. And so what was passed by the committee was one motion or 2?
On here, it's 1.
Yeah, it's on one.
Okay, I'm hearing it was 1. So I'm gonna bring it forward as 1, but there is now a motion to divide. So let's consider the motion to divide. Did we have a second? Yes. Motion to divide has been seconded. Any discussion of the motion? All right, let us vote then. Sorry, we'll close out the last vote. And we will tee up a motion to divide into 2 motions, 1 and 2.
Member Klein is a yes.
Okay, thank you. We're teeing it up here for the rest of the board. Okay, please vote. Looking for 2, right? I think we're all here. Or somewhere. 2 more?
Oh, it didn't go? Sorry, I thought it went.
1 more. All right, that motion passes 13-2 with the no votes being Member Straight, Member Norton. So we do now have 2 motions for the body. And they are as framed on the screen. Member Bogus.
So, sir, my question is, do we need to identify a funding source? As you read it out loud, that was the first time I looked at that motion in that light.
Let's see. Provide. That good question to Deputy Jones, perhaps, or the chair. Question is, what's the funding source on number 1 when we say provide?
What, but do we need to clarify?
Do we need to, and if so, what is it? Correct. All right. We're getting some input
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, so Chair Moss, through you, if I understand the question correctly, we have an identified source for the funds. It's not identified in the motion, but the motion will allow us to use state carry forward funds for both these, should the board pass both motions or both intent, the $300,000 to support Tooele and the $700,000 to help pay the Medicaid reimbursement costs, so.
Vice Chair Earl?
Point of order, I don't think the second motion is the 700,000. I think it's the funding for the staff for this year and next year, so I don't, someone correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, that was a previous motion from another
Yeah, I
time.
don't see the 7 in here.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, that's my fault. So the $700,000 is in a different motion, so that's from state carried forward funds, so yeah.
So the
Vice Chair
300, what's the source then of the
State
300?
carry forward funds.
Okay, that is
yes,
state
sir.
carry forward,
Which,
okay.
which were unencumbered, and now if you pass this, they will become encumbered for us to do it. Now, it will take the legislature to repurpose those funds from you to put them in the USDB line item. But that doesn't, so USDB can move forward, should you pass this, and, expense the up to $300,000, and then we'll basically do what's called a journal voucher process, where the legislature will move the money into the USDB line item during the session. So that's the intent with the 300,000. So,
But we have an indication that they're amenable to that.
yes, yeah, from
Okay.
everyone, yeah, from the we checked on with the LFA, of course,
Right.
with this too, yeah, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comment then? I think the first one we can put to a vote then that's been teed up. Sorry. Could we get a motion to move the first one then? Okay, so moved. Any second? Second. Now, once it's divided, we got to bring up a separate motion. Okay, so that number one's before the board. And with seeing no other lights, please vote.
I do have a question.
Member Klein?
How is necessary services defined in this particular context?
Deputy Jones, I see your light. Thank you.
The definition of necessary services are services required to students by law or rule from the USDB to those particular districts. Does that answer Board Member Klein's question?
Member Klein?
They're
Okay.
outlined in the IEP, yeah.
Okay.
So then
necessary
they're
meaning
compelled
required
to
by
do it.
IEP under law
Correct.
and rule. Okay. Member Klein, does that
Thank you.
answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, please vote.
Member Klein is a yes.
Thank you, Member Klein. Two more. One more. Did I vote? I voted. Did we get Member Klein's on? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. That leaves motion number 2. So moved by Member Norton. Is there a second? Seconded. Any further discussion to motion number 2? So I'll read that one again as a separate motion. It is to direct staff to work with board members in the legislature to request temporary funding for FTE needs for next year as we work toward a new formula long-term solution that aligns practice with current or potential code and meets the needs of those working and learning at USDB, the LEAs in the bottom 3 enrollment percentile, and the large LEAs with 3% or more of the public student population. Okay, please vote.
Member Klein is a no.
Klein's a no. Thank you. Okay, that passes 14-1. No vote being Member Klein. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair Norton.
Our next item is 3.4. This surrounds R277490, the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program, BTS Arts Amendment. The motion that comes out of committee is that the board approves R277-490, Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program, BTS Arts, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Vice Chair Earl.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to move draft 2. I need a second.
Second
Okay.
by Member Green. Would you like to
Yes.
speak to the motion?
I'll speak to the motion. I just asked for some clarity. Previously, it just talked about the proportionality of funds would be distributed. So I just asked clarity on what those would be. So if you go to line 135, it strikes all LEA's unfunded cost, and it articulates in 136, cover additional cost not initially covered by the program proportionally. And then it adds a B, the superintendent shall determine an LEA's proportional share by determining percentage of salary and benefits not funded by the uniform amount compared to statewide unfunded costs and multiplying that percentage by the total dollar amount of remaining funds. Also, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know, Sam, or if you're following here. So also on line, and I'm assuming this is a new addition that would correlate with this, so someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Hang on, I gotta find it. So on line 112, 111, it says the uniform amount described in subsection 1A shall be the average statewide arts educator salary plus benefits. And then it has here excluding salary and benefits from the educator salary adjustment under section 53F2405. And I'm assuming that was added in because it's in blue. So this is just seeking to create clarity around how it will be proportionally distributed so that it's very clear to LEAs, it's very clear to our staff, and that there's no ambiguity in that, if that makes sense, that we know exactly how we're going to do that. So that's the motion before the body.
Okay, discussion to that substitute motion. Chair Norton.
This is a concern that I have for both of the motions. Beverly Taylor Sorensen is near and dear to my heart. It is a great program. This helps students in these crazy days more than probably anything else we do, with them feeling that peace. My peace is a little disturbed right now, however, because of maybe the message that we are sending to our legislature with this information right here, because they just gave us they just brought out a new funding method. And that new funding method just went into play in basically at the start of this school year. So, we've gone from August to December. And now we're rearranging all of that again, not really giving this an opportunity to come to fruition. I would like to address a question to our finance staff, if I might, which has to do with both of these motions. And do I have your permission, Chair?
Sure, please.
My question is, how has this program been working? What do you hear from the LEAs? Are we in an area where we need to redo this all over again? Or is the new plan that they brought in working? Just give me some guidance on, and what message are we sending to the legislature?
And might I just piggyback on that? If you could distinguish this from the bill, just to Chair Norton's question, if this departs from the bill, how? And then that kind of ties into the other questions.
Chair Moss, if I may respond.
Yes, same.
Sam Uri, School Finance Director. Of note to the board, we do have Lori Baevsky, our fine art specialist here as well, who's done more outreach related to Beverly Taylor Sorensen with the LEAs than I have personally. you know, I think,
I'm sorry, what? Well, we can turn to her if you'd like to. Let's hear from Sam, and then if we have a request for Lori.
my assessment is that it is early to, you know, to be gathering much data at this point because, as Member Norton noted, this change did just occur this fiscal year. I have heard anecdotally that there are some LEAs potentially considering, you know, pulling back their participation in Beverly Taylor Sorensen because they're not getting quite as much proportional to their average salaries. Basically, what the uniform amount did was it, you know, uniformly we created the amount, which was $72,000 this year. There were LEAs that benefited from that have lower salaries. There were LEAs that pay a higher average salary and so received less money from the BTS program this year, and that's what was done with the uniform amount. This rule change seeks to kind of in some ways go back to not to the 80-20 that existed before, but requires all LEAs to have some skin in the game or to be matching some of those funds, even if their salaries are quite a bit lower than the average salary. Does that help address the question?
Yes, please.
From Director Uri. This draft, you mean draft 2 or draft 1?
Well, yeah. They.
Oh, I didn't have it. I didn't wait for the red. You said this makes it, and what did you mean by this?
Chair, if I may, both drafts do this. The second draft just clarifies the methodology for doing making the adjustments, but both drafts would have the same effect.
Could you just, I apologize, could you clarify how this departs from the bill? Does it?
So it's open for interpretation, I'll say. In my view, a uniform amount is a single amount that's distributed to each LEA. In the view of this draft, or both of these drafts, you are requiring all LEAs, regardless of their average salary, to contribute to a match, if you will, to this program. So that does maybe, you know, depart somewhat from the language of the bill. You can still classify it as a uniform amount, though, because it has a uniform way of distributing the funds. It's just not a set firm amount.
Deputy Jones?
So, Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones, to answer your question, Chair, it could be perceived as if you pass this rule, that your application of the definition of uniform amount is different than what the definition of the uniform amount was in the original legislation. That it could be interpreted as that. So much so that I do believe I'm able to say that legislator or legislators are concerned that we're not giving this enough time, you know, based on the original intent of the bill, giving it 1 year to see if indeed any of these alleged or potential issues, such as Director Uri articulated, that there does seem to be indications that the program may be reduced in particular places. But to the earlier question of have you any evidence that shows that that has occurred, I do not. I do not have any evidence where I can say that by an LEA's name, that they have made adjustments to the program, either, discontinuing a particular art course or doing all that, we'd have to defer to the subject matter experts within that program to see if they can provide specific instances where, as a result of the legislation, there has been a declination in the program itself, which I think is that's what board members are seeking, is you're seeking whether to know for a fact that as a result of the legislation, we have seen a decline. I have asked that question. I can't possibly talk to 160 BAs, and I know it's in the elementary schools and different programs, but all the ones I have talked to have said to me that they will find a way to continue at least the level of the program that they were at before. So again, I have no evidence or indication at all. However, I would defer to the program subject matter experts to also come forward and attest to that if they do have a specific example or examples where, as a result of the legislation that was passed, there have been, declines or in a case, because Board Member Norton is correct. That's the legislator is concerned that we haven't given this enough time, meaning a whole full school year, and to study it and to see if indeed some of the risks that were put up there have come true or to fruition. Does that help, Chair?
A bit. I'm still
Okay.
curious how this departs from legislative direction. That's my question. And everything could be interpreted to be different. But
Right.
we have a question from Member Booth.
I appreciate the question that Chair Norton has brought forward, and before we proceed to a vote, I think it would be very helpful, as has been mentioned many times, to hear from Lori Bajewski, just to add that information so that we're fully informed, at least as well as we can be at this particular point in time. If that would be possible, Chair, that would be very helpful.
Yes, thank you, Lori.
Lori Bajewski, Fine Arts Coordinator, and Beverly Taylor Sorensen, Arts Learning Program Coordinator. Thank you. To Deputy Jones's reference to actual schools, we have a short list of schools who have not participated specifically because of the funding. One from Davis, one from Provo, 2 from Alpine, and 1 from Box Elder. In addition, we have 15 schools from the Davis County that deferred applying to the program because of the uniform amount and the unknowns around that. In addition, this corresponds to our strategic planning of the program. Our old strategic plan retired at the end of June, and we started a new strategic planning process, and during that we surveyed all of our stakeholders, and in the board backup you can see some of those comments speaking to, as Deputy Jones referenced, they are what we've heard. So over 50% of each of our superintendents, charter directors, and principals responded to the survey, which is kind of remarkable. And what they're saying is that they, as this motion was prefaced, that they believe in the program and that they were willing to step up for the year to bridge the funding, and they don't. The ones with more of a cost burden are finding it not affordable in the long term. And so, if we rewind the clock, we had 6 weeks, this body had 6 weeks to come up with a funding model for the distribution, for the allocation formula. And within 6 weeks, we all did as best we could. And this motion, both motions are, draft 1 and draft 2 are to tweak the existing formula model, in small ways. and to create, well, Director Yuri spoke to this as well. So it's refining that funding model to, and really, in response to stakeholder feedback, it's just to make the program affordable for every school. And that's really what the staff responded to, is so that anybody, any LEA, any school that wants to participate has the funds to do that. And that's why we created a second distribution. Instead of taking that excess money, which we're doing this year, and giving it back to the schools for equipment, supplies, and other program supports. I hope that helps clarify.
Chair Moss.
Yeah, I think I have a couple otherwise, Vice Chair Earl. So the difference between the legislation and this is that we redistribute the remaining amounts proportionately, and in Vice Chair Earl's substitute, it defines what proportionally is. That's the surplus, right? What's the basic, sorry, I'm dense. I've been talking Beverly Taylor for a while, and I was in finance. So I'm trying to make sure I understand, though, for the final vote, what is the difference between the statutory uniform amount? Molly did that. She will. Sorry, but yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I fully understand. When you say it could be interpreted, anything could be interpreted. What would be the interpretation that says this is different than what came down from the legislature?
Chair Moss, if I may. So let me give you some examples here. Let's say I run charter school Progress Academy. It doesn't exist, but I have one BTS educator, and their salary and benefits combined, after we take out the educator salary adjustment, come to $72,000. Under the current model, they would get $72,000. They would have no match. Under the uniform amount as described, as we interpreted it from the legislation, this new model, and we call it the Base Plus model, requires every LEA, so that Progress Academy, the $72,000, we would need to remove 25% of that $72,000 to go into that additional pot, because every LEA is now required to contribute at least 25% into the cost of that educator's salary. This has different effects on different LEAs. For example, according to the salary verifications this year with Davis School District would actually lose $173,000 with the Base Plus model. So even though they are saying that some of the schools aren't choosing to participate, based on the salaries of those actual educators, they would actually lose money. There are LEAs that would gain because they're higher. Their salaries of the BTS educators only are higher. So it can get kind of complicated, but I think the legislature's view was, we don't want to be involved in teacher compensation. It does, you can have that LEA with the teacher that makes $72,000. Maybe that teacher retires, takes another position. You bring in another educator with a PhD at the top of the salary schedule that's now making $95,000. It's a totally different scenario within that specific small LEA. So I think the legislature's some of the thoughts were, it's easier for us to determine how to potentially grow the program or manage the program when every LEA is getting the same amount per FTE. So that's, again, I'm not trying to opine on the merits of each, but that's some of the scenarios behind it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, it's just interesting moving parts. So currently we have a set uniform amount that they're all they're all receiving by law. This would impact that going into next year,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. And then I guess my amendments only had to do with that surplus piece. It didn't have to do with the initial you know, whatever, but it would incorporate those into this. So I
Correct.
appreciate that. So are we saying we have less art educators this year, or we won't know till next year, right? That's what we're saying. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to figure out the moving pieces
Right.
here.
It-
So it'd be next year that we would be able to identify whether or not that contributed piece, right? Uniform out with a contributed piece, right, has an impact or not. So that's the question, is whether or not that is the interpretation of the law the legislature wants, or whether that's outside. Is that my understand? Did I just articulate that correctly?
To my view, yes. We can make general assumptions with some of the bigger districts and things like that, but year to year, it really is hard to project for each LEA whether they will go up or down based on this methodology.
Right. Okay.
So-
Thank you.
Let's see, what's our order of lights? We got Member Booth and Member Davis, and then Member Booth. Yep, okay.
Just a couple of questions. So, the legislation prior to the new legislation required a 20% match. Is that right? From everybody. So then everybody paid 20%, and then the legislature, through us, reimbursed for the amount of the salary. Like if Salt Lake had a higher salary, they were reimbursed for their teacher at that higher salary, because you can't pay a teacher less if the teacher next door is getting 20,000 more. A school in another area was reimbursed for how much it cost for that. And that was done through our office, is that right? Not through legislation, correct? There was just kind of a lump sum, and then it was reimbursed according to the amounts. Okay. My next question is about the surplus again. So where is the surplus coming from? Is it coming from the 20%, that's the contribution to the fund, or is it coming from something else? And then my last question is, the specific schools that you mentioned that are declining to participate now or reducing teachers, did they reduce that for this year, or have they said they're not going to advertise for the coming year?
Should I take the first question? Let me answer. We'll go in reverse order, Board Member
Okay.
Davis. So those who, that short list is for this fiscal year, for this fiscal school year,
Right now.
right now.
So we're already seeing that.
So we're already
Okay.
seeing that. And also, I failed to mention that several of our schools also had to reduce the FTE, so the amount that they are contributing towards arts education because of their salary schedule. So that we have reduced FTE even though they found a way to continue to participate at a lower level. So we're seeing that this year as well. And I do think those with lower salaries, I think we'll see a bump up. You know, we're going to see more participation from those schools that have lower salary schedules. And then we can probably anticipate a reduced participation from those with higher salary schedules and teachers with more longevity in the program.
In the legislation or the base plus
Using the current
legislation?
board rule funding allocation. Yeah, so with not the base plus
So you're saying
for next year, so.
the base plus would equal that out more? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so the base plus, so looking at Sam's fabulous mathematics, we're looking at a distribution model that ranges from 21% to 43% in fiscal '26. Currently, we have a distribution model that ranges the LEA match goes from 0 to 64% this year. So about a third of our schools are paying 0 to 5%, and a third of our schools are paying 40 to 65% this year. That would reduce to a 21 to 43% distribution model for fiscal '26 to make it, as I said, hopefully more affordable for any LEA who wants to participate
In the base plus.
in using the base plus.
Sorry, I asked lots of follow-ups. Apologize.
No problem. It's needed. Member Booth?
I am really grateful for those who are spending the time and working through the mathematics and trying to discover, Sam is a treasure for this program that I absolutely love. And the bottom line for me has always been how many children are going to have this rich experience that will balance out and infuse life into their educational adventure. And we've just continually, and I know people get tired of hearing about it, but it is so important. And I'm so grateful for the wonderful legislators who are committed to this. I'm so grateful for our staff in the agency, in various departments who have to cooperate. This is a complex, difficult, I don't know that we have any more complex issue or program, and we've got to get it right. So whatever it is that these smart people that have been spending the midnight hours working through their all of the possibilities, we need as a board to lock arms and back them up so that the largest number of students possible in every charter, in every LEA, in every situation are getting this experience. We recognize we're limited. We can't do everything we'd like to do. We'd like to do 100% all across the state for every child. That's been our dream. The dream is not dead. We're still working towards every child, every art for every child. But in the meantime, with the limitations we have, we want to use those resources that have been generously awarded to us by legislators who are committed, and we want to make sure that we get it right. And so the Finance Committee, thank you for your work. Our agency staff, Lori and her team, Lisa, so many are giving us such great information. Let's make sure that as a board, we are supportive of that good work that they're doing so that we're not at odds with one another and we're moving forward as positively as possible for the kids so that more children have this opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Member Straight? Or Chair Norton, was it back to you first? Sorry, I thought that was the perpetual chair light. Back to you.
And I don't know if this question is for Vice Chair Earl or for finance staff, so whoever it best suits. But it's a clarification. Vice Chair Earl, does your amendment that you just brought in, does that work with the original, this new legislative model we're in right now, and this rule change that we have on the table right now? Does it work either with either one of those, or does it only work with one or the other?
It's going to work with, if there's that surplus that we're not putting into resources, but we're saying we want to distribute this back out. That's what the intent is, to just to articulate the distribution so it's proportionally distributed.
So you're clarifying that.
That's all it is a clarification,
Distribution.
so we know how to distribute it. It doesn't mess with the other model stuff at all.
You're
It's just saying
proposing a
yeah.
different math method of the distribution. Oh,
It's not
it's not even different.
after it's been distributed and there's a surplus. That's what it's talking about. The surplus that's there after where they've met all the criteria.
Yeah.
This is how it would be distributed. The surplus.
The surplus, right.
Is only surplus.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that the same, but is that the same way that we are distributing? Currently? No. Okay.
The new amendments only apply to the basic class.
Chair Moss?
Yes,
I
sir.
think it would be a value add for the board and the public to go to the backups and see the comparison chart that we have between the current distribution method that came out of the legislative session and this proposed base plus formula. So as you can see here, you know, and I know people don't necessarily like these terms, but in either scenario, you're going to have winners and or losers, right? You're going to have LEAs, you know, that get less money. So I think that's the point that has been made is, well, why change what's coming out of the legislature if you're only going to make it so others, you know, what problem are we trying to solve? Well, then it turned into discussions about, well, I mean, I'm still not clear on, are we actually losing teachers? Have districts or LEA said that we will no longer provide art programs in the schools? Have they said that?
Based on the surveys, we're seeing indications that that is a potential trend.
A potential trend, but it hasn't been decided yet that they won't or that they do that. Is that fair to say, Lori? Through the chair?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Chair,
I'm
for
being
the,
asked
for
to
the
direct
record,
traffic.
right? 'Cause, well, the staff have just said what. So that was a misunderstanding on my part. I was not aware that districts had reduced teachers in the current fiscal year. And that's what you're saying? Is there Beverly Taylor Sorensen arts classes have gone away in this year? Is that what you're saying through the chair?
That is
To
correct.
you, Lori.
Okay.
Okay, lights. Member Green. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep me in line there. Member Straight. Straight, Green, Bogus, and Hart. There we go.
I'm going to try and not think while I speak.
I'm looking forward to this. I might try it after you do.
Well, because my understanding just changed. So I guess my only thought is how time sensitive, since this already applied to the current year, how time sensitive is our present discussion?
Question, because I've heard a couple questions about postponing or tabling, but Deputy Jones?
Well, so if I may, what I'm sensing is that there's this overwhelming inclination to that we as staff would say, well, if you do this, then it will mean that the program would not be reduced or either way. That's why we're showing the comparison chart. None of us should sit up here and guarantee that if you do the base plus formula, that it's still not going to result in. Is that fair? It still may result in, because you can see the differences in the comparison. So at Davis County School District, under the base plus formula, as Director Uri pointed out, gets reduced to $173,000. So this is precisely why the implication of the legislation is the legislature did not want to get involved in compensation debates or, to leave it up to the local control of the LEAs to decide how interested they are in keeping that program going based on a distribution formula that, again, came out of the session. If our intent is, and please, don't misunderstand my tone, or if the intent is to try to find some kind of distribution formula that will not result in, if you use the baseline numbers of teachers, I think situations on the ground change all the time. As the example of Davis County School District, they're bringing in new teachers that will come on their salary schedule, right? I mean, there's just no way at this level that anyone from the staff could say, well, hey, board, if you put this in the rule, right, this will mean that the program will not get reduced, or the footprint of the program will not get reduced in all of these places. That's just impossible. There's just too much different reasons why they would either increase their footprint or they wouldn't do it. And it all has to be decided at the local level, which I really do believe, right, wrong, or indifferent to this, staff don't take a position. We try to be objective and duly inform you was the intent of the legislature. They just didn't want to get into exactly what we're talking about here, where it's all about the compensation to do it, to give everyone a uniform amount, an equal amount, and then let them decide at the local level how to either continue the program, increase it, or do that. I really think that was the intent. So yes, in a way it could take away from the implication of the intent, which was to not get involved in compensation in order to potentially keep the program going or increase it or do those types of things too. That's all. That's all I'm saying. So,
That helps. Thank you. Member Davis. Let's see. I lost track. Where? Not Green. Okay. Bogus, Davis, and Hart.
Did I jump in front of, I thought somebody else was before me. Oh, no, I'm
Bogus, Hart, Davis. There we go.
So I would just offer to all of the members of the board that I think we're missing some key elements of the conversation. And one is that one of the things we engage in the arts program, specifically the BTS program, is to expand it. And I think one of the questions that we have not yet addressed is, does what is currently in place inhibit expansion, which is expanding arts into other schools? And after reviewing the data and having the conversations, I would say it absolutely does inhibit the growth of this program. I don't know that any of our staff would say that outright, and so maybe we can ask them, but I do think we're looking at a place where the arts either become stagnant or they decrease in our schools, and that deeply concerns me. And then I think that the fact that we have documented institutions who have declined to participate or delay their participation because of the way this is designed also concerns me. And so I just would ask that we cogitate on that and factor it into our decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hart.
The legislature passed a law, and I think we need to consider the intent of that when we make our rules. I think there's enough question here that that I would like to make a motion to postpone.
Okay, that's been seconded. Postpone to January board meeting?
Postpone to, anybody got any ideas? No, no, I just think yeah, exactly, but I think we should just postpone it and let indefinitely and let the next board leadership figure out when it's appropriate after conferring with staff and legislature. Oh, then it's not
So-
indefinitely. It's undetermined. Okay,
Let's-
yep,
what's
postpone
your-
until January, that's my motion.
Postpone until January's board meeting?
Sure,
Is that your motion?
sure.
Okay. We have some suggestions if you want to consider them, but I think we got a motion.
January, it's
Getting a little
ambiguous enough,
informal here,
it can
but-
be interpreted the way it needs to be. And it's been seconded.
Okay. The motion is to postpone this until January. It's been seconded. Discussion of the motion. I see Davis,
can I speak to
Bogus,
my
and
motion?
Lear. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I think we need to get it right, and I think there's enough questions, and I think we need to lay it out. I know that I thought I was clear on it, and then I wasn't clear on it, and then I was clear on it, and I just, to make a decision like this, you need to have more clarity. So I think that there's a lot of information we could gather, and there's people we could talk to, and I just, rather than make it and then change it, or make it and cause grief for LEAs, I just think we need more information.
Okay, discussion of the motion. Member Bogus, Davis, Lear. What's our?
Davis, Bogus, Lear.
There you go.
I would support this. I thought I was clear, and I keep learning new pieces, and now I have questions about both the legislative and the base plus. And so I would support the motion to postpone. I would like to know, maybe, is there a way to think, having heard all of this discussion and concerns, my question was, someone mentioned something about we had a certain amount of time. Legislature gave a base amount of funding. We had a certain amount of time that we were supposed to design a formula. Was that written somewhere or we were just told that? Where did that come from? And will postponing cause any problem with that? And if we are supposed to come up with a formula, that tells me that they probably didn't think we were just going to do the 72,000 straight across the board. There was maybe going to be some kind of a, how do we mitigate the fact that then some give 0% and some are giving 50% or whatever it was. Is there a way, though, taking that base funding and instead of taking necessarily like everybody pay 20%, we consider something like in the funding model, we give an extra portion to those who have a certain salary schedule over this amount, and then build that into the funding from the legislature. I don't know, this is probably just to be explored with the postponing for the committee or wherever it goes to, but I'm hearing concerns about both and trying to think through possible things to think about after we postpone.
Chair Moss?
Yes, sir, please.
Board Member Davis brings up a good point. The intent of the law as it was interpreted by the staff was that we come up with a uniform amount. That was it, and we did that. It was $72,000. Not unilaterally we didn't, but we consulted with the LFA, GOPB, it was just that if the way that we read the law was not about a formula, it was to come up with a uniform amount, and that uniform amount is $72,000. And so then from there, though, it became concerning, which I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we're not trying to unduly influence either way. All we're trying to do is say the letter of the law as it was interpreted by us and by the LFA and by all those who came up with that uniform amount in the beginning of $72,000 was because we all read the law the same way. There was no requirement for a formula. That came later as more meetings occurred and outside. So from the beginning, we believe that we met the intent of the law, which was to provide a uniform amount based on the data that we had at the time, which is how we resulted in the 72,000. Does that help clarify a little bit?
Quick follow-up. Yeah.
I didn't understand this. When did it come later, from the legislature or from the board to work on a formula?
So my understanding is there was follow-on after the uniform amount was established. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
There was subsequent meetings that occurred between staff of the different agencies, and then maybe even particular legislators were involved as well to continue the discussion about a formula that ended up being, well, could we look at the base plus formula? So
we have a motion pending to postpone. Let's make sure we're speaking to the motion. Any discussion to, let's see, whose lights are on? And Bogus and Lear, is this on the motion to postpone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would move to amend the motion.
Okay. It's in order.
And that we move to postpone to a special meeting prior to the end of this calendar year. And with a second, I'd like to speak to the motion.
Is there a second? Seconded, Member Green. Speak to the motion, please.
So I do think this is time sensitive. Our LEAs work to create budgets, and they used those preliminary or draft budgets to advocate for funding or against funding. in the legislative cycle, and without this decision being made, they don't have numbers for what they can do as they move into this next process where they make decisions and have different conversations. And they end up in situations where they have to say, I can't answer that question because the board hasn't made this decision yet. And I think making this decision and becoming firm on one side or the other prior to the start of the legislating session is paramount.
Okay, so the motion has been made to amend by postponing to a special meeting. I assume that's a full board meeting, Member Bogus? Full board meeting prior to the end of the calendar year. Discussion on that motion. Here's something else, okay? All right, if not, we can vote. The motion then is to amend the substitute by postponing until a special board meeting prior to the end of the calendar year. Let's tee that up for... Yes, Member Klein? Member Klein, are you with us?
I'm a no.
Member Klein's a no. Thank you. We've got a few votes. One more. Okay, that motion fails by a vote of 10-5. The yeses being Member Hymas, Member Green, Member Bogus, Member Wood, and Member Booth. So that brings us back to the underlying motion from Vice Chair Hart, which was that the board postpone this item until, and I think, Member Hart, does that capture, or was it left more open to just say January? Was your motion to postpone until... Okay, I think the... Until January was the motion as made and seconded. So, any further discussion of that? Member Davis. Oh, sorry. Yes. Back to Member Lear.
Cindy's question about the urgency answered part of my question. I heard kind of an answer. I appreciate that. I have two more comments. I hope, message to new board leadership, if we discuss something for an hour, I hope we start amending our bylaws or changing our practices to vote on something instead of discuss it for an hour and then delay. Second concern is that I am done with the intent of legislation or board rules. I think personally we work with the words that are on the paper, and I feel like we're being the board is being sort of jerked around or taken advantage of, or call it what you want. But if we look for intent, we'll do this with every single issue. So another comment for board leadership: I hope we can read words that are on a paper and act on those in the future.
Thank you, Member Lear. Thank you, Justice Scalia. I've always wanted to thank you for your your strict textualism. It's my last day. I had to. I like textualism, so thank you, as opposed to intent. Deputy Jones.
Actually, so from a staff perspective, I sincerely appreciate Board Member Lear's point about intent, right? No, none taken, ma'am. But as a staff member, I get asked what the interpretation of the law is. So with that, I would like to go to what Board Member Lear said. What does the law say? What's the word in the law? It says from money appropriated for the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program, and subject to subsection 5, the state board shall, and I'm going to paragraph C, beginning with the 2024-25 school year, establish a uniform amount for the funds described in section 4B. And then paragraph D, ensure the uniform amount described in subsection 4C does not duplicate state funding an educator received under the educator salary adjustment described in section 53F-2-405. So, Chair, through you and back to Board Member Davis, there was no letter or printed word that said come up with a formula. It was come up with a uniform amount, and we did just that. So, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy Jones. Member Davis, did you have light?
Yeah, I'm gonna just amend that to postpone to the full board meeting in January.
Okay, it's been seconded. Would you like to speak to that?
I felt like a December extra meeting is hard. It's hard to get everyone together, especially in December. But the board meeting's like a week later in January. And I think that will give enough time to look at, for people who have questions, to get their questions answered, to get down into more specifics. I'm, like I said, still learning even as of what we just heard a minute ago. So if there's an alternate that we can come up with, I think that's a good time. Thanks.
Okay, so the motion before the floor is to amend. Was that proposed as a friendly? Member Hart said that it was a friendly, so if there's no objection, we just need to see if there's an objection.
Somebody else does. Just let's move on.
Any objection? Hearing none? That's friendly? Okay. So that's what's pending then, is that the board postpone until the full January board meeting. Seeing no further lights, let's please vote.
Member Klein is a yes.
Thank you, Member Klein. Yeah, Natalie was a yes. Member Klein, do we get Member Klein up there? Klein was a yes, correct? Member Klein, is a yes?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. That passes 11-4. The no votes being Member Lear, Member Bogus, Member Reel, and Member Wood. Thank you. So that is postponed. Back to you, Chair Norton.
Okay, we're on item 3.5. This is R277-927, the Teacher and Student Success Act, the TSSA program with amendments. The motion for the board is that the board approves R277-927, Teacher and Student Success Act, TSSA program, draft 2 on second and final reading. And we have an amendment that's been added to the draft.
Okay.
This is a clarification.
Yeah, Kelsey, let me get the Google Doc on screen.
So that amendment is that the board strike or preschool programs on line 125.
Oh, second.
Okay, that's been seconded. Would you like to speak to that, Chair Norton?
No, just, it stands. We're good.
What's the need to delete preschool programs? May not use program money to support.
My friend, may I call on my friend, Mr. Ben? Oh, no, sorry.
Ms. Webke.
Yes, no, Ms. Webke.
Thank you.
right. Good morning, everyone. Sarah Wibke, Director of School Improvement Programs. As far as this specific add-on, if you will, this amendment, so in the code and the rule originally had conflicting language. This was part of that. And so one of the additional pieces that Mr. Rasmussen put in was around how early childhood also includes preschool. And so with that being said, that was added to make that clarification and make sure there was no longer a conflict between board rule and code. However, preschool is mentioned again later on and missed. So just striking it out again. So again, removing the conflict of code and rule.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay.
I knew it was conflict.
Any discussion on that motion then? So this is an amendment to the underlying motion. If this passes, we'll go back to the motion. The motion then is that the board strike, quote, or preschool programs on line 125. Seeing no further lights, please vote. Member Klein?
No.
Member Klein is a no. That passes 14-1. Member Klein being the no vote, and that brings us back to the underlying motion out of Finance, which is that the board approve R277-927 TSSA program draft 2 as amended on second and final reading. Any further discussion of that motion? Seeing none, please
I do
vote.
have a
Oh,
question.
Member Klein? Or no?
Yes. Member Klein.
You got it.
It on line 36, it talks about capital expenditures do not include student technology devices. What do student technology devices fall under if not capital expenditures? And why the distinction?
I see Sam Uri offering, I believe. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Sam Uri, School Finance Director. So the reason that we recommended this change is that prior accounting practices were that student technology devices like a Chromebook would not be capitalized, but there has been recent changes to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board standards that if you have, you buy a group of 100 Chromebooks, you then capitalize those as one single fixed asset. The code explicitly allows student technology devices, but there was some confusion in the field to say, well, now by my accounting standards, this is a capital expenditure, and it says I can't use it on capital expenditures. So this clarifies that for the accounting purposes, they are capital assets. For the purposes of this program, you can still purchase technology devices.
Thank you. Okay.
Does that answer the question?
I forgot who the question came
Yes.
from. Member Klein, yes, okay. She said yes, thank you. Okay, any further questions or discussion to the motion? If not, the motion then is to approve. And let's see, there we go. As amended on second and final reading. Please vote.
Member Klein is a no.
Klein's a no, thank you. Okay, that motion passes 13-2. No votes being Member Bogus and Member Klein. Thank you. Back to Chair Norton.
Okay, we have moved on at a rapid pace today. We are now on item 3.6, Board Policy 2001, Board Member Compensation. This is an amendment. The motion before the board is that the board approves Board Policy 2001, Board Member Compensation, Draft 2.
Any discussion on that motion? Vice Chair Earl.
Q.
Oh,
Well, I think we have an amendment.
Yeah, I have an amendment.
Vice Chair Earl. has
Well,
the
and
light.
so does Member Lear.
Okay.
Who, we have an order.
have my
Vice Chair
light
Earl.
on, but.
Vice Chair Earl, okay. you got it.
So, my motion would be, I have an amendment to this, it would be to strike lines 30 through 36. And then on line 42, it would be changing 6 to 4 additional meeting. You got it up there somewhere? Do you have my amendment? Yeah, it would be working off of draft 2, sorry. Yeah, so it's striking the lines up of it that are in red there. And then then on 42, it would be adding 4 meeting days per month. So it's a clarification, 4 additional meeting days per month. And then it would be adding on a 4th item, which would be, so it would be after 46, it would be adding on a 4th item that says a legislative general session or interim meeting. So I'd be adding that to the list. So we're not having it up here as kind of a thing. We're just putting on there, these things qualify. You can pick which ones you use. Oh, I spoke to it, sorry.
My bad, I overlooked. We have a second. Yes. Okay, it's been seconded.
Okay, and I just trying to create a clarity there. There was some discussion about, number of days or whatever, kind of in just talking to some people, some wanted more, some wanted less, and just kind of landing on about 4 additional days per month. So.
Yeah.
I have a question.
I'm trying to understand, you're increasing the days from 2 to 4, is that right?
No, it's from 6 to down to 4.
And so
We
it's
changed it though it was 6 per month and we changed it to 6 per year is what came out of committee.
It doesn't even say that though. It doesn't say per year, it just says 6.
So which line are we talking about again? Oh, it's 6 additional, line 42. 6 additional meeting days for time worked. So is that 6 additional days? So is that 6 additional days in addition to what, as I'm asking? Which is
Board meeting.
board meeting
Well, we have those
and special
4
meetings.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
in addition to any of the other provisions that are being changed.
Yes.
Yeah, no other provisions are being changed.
Well, there are, there are 6 additional meeting days related to board agenda items. Okay,
And then adding the legislative piece there instead of up above. So
okay.
if you're
And-
wanting to do 4, that's what my motion is, amendment, then it
Okay.
would have to fall within one of those 4 items. You can,
So you've gone from
There's-
6 in this new policy. What we proposed was 6, and this goes 6 per year, and this goes to 48 per year.
Whoa.
Well, 4 months.
well, it's 4 a month.
So it would be 16 per year.
No, 4 times
No,
12 is
12.
48.
I'm trying to
No
understand how
meeting
many
days.
meetings.
That was not amended in committee. It was actually amended up above, and the number was 5. So it's up above this section where there was a number that was linked. It was 5 per year, I believe, was the language. That part was amended in committee. This section was not amended in committee.
On the point of order, but
I-
anybody
I-
want to clarify what we currently have and what it's understood and whether you want to work anything else into an amendment?
My point of order was
Back to you.
total days. I just want to
Yeah.
know, how many days in addition to board meeting days, can a member be compensated for? And then I have a further question.
Per month or per year, right? There was some
Per month or per year, and I
question
think that
for
should be
of what.
stated.
Yeah, okay.
And that's in the
Could be
motion.
54. Okay, and I think there is a little bit of ambiguity. Maybe
5 and a
somebody
6
will
both,
want to
though.
address that.
My,
Back to you, Member Lear. No, let's go back to
Oh,
order
okay.
here, but I think we got some
I'm
good back
still
and
not
forth.
clear. This number should be in addition to board meeting days for clarity.
Okay.
So-
Is that an amendment?
So, yes, yes. That's one amendment, is in addition to board meeting or days, and then up to 6 additional meeting days. So that was
So we're
one.
not, I just, in point of order, we're
hang on.
not speaking, but it's point of order.
All right.
The motion, I made an amendment. We're speaking to something else, and if she wants to make an amendment, then we'd speak to that.
You're right.
So you gotta
Correct.
speak
I-
to whatever amendment is on the table.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Okay.
You're right. And I
I just want to
invited.
know total days.
I invited amendment. If there's an amendment, having had the kind of back and forth, if there's an amendment, we.
Do you want me to speak
we
to
can-
what
Yes.
she's asking?
All right. Yes, we're.
I'd love that.
Hold on. I'll direct traffic, but remind me who. Yes, you made the motion. So back to you, and then we'll bring it back to whoever else has
So
lights
the
on.
motion on the table from the committee, the way that was discussed in committee, what was brought to us initially was a more open-ended legislative. There weren't caps around how many extra meetings there would be. There were concerns expressed by some that it's hard to say we're going to do things that are open-ended when we have a finite budget. So in an effort to put some parameters around that, we made a new motion, which is what you heard from Finance Committee, which was to add, in addition to everything that is currently status quo, our monthly meetings, extra meetings called by the chair, and ad hoc approved meetings, in addition to that, there would be 6 meetings per year, opportunity for people to choose what they were going to work on toward their board goals.
Okay.
And that would be 6 per year. And then on top of that, there would be 5 meetings that you could also be compensated for legislative purposes if we were asked to present at the Capitol or attend a work group with legislators or something like that. And so that could be by the chair. So that could be a total of 11 potential extra meetings per year.
Gotcha.
Then there was, in between that, lots of conversations about changing that, because it doesn't read exactly like that. So some people thought that's 6 per year and thought that fit more in line with what they were thinking. And then other conversations like, well, that's a lot. We were actually thinking a total of 11 per year. And then there's kind of been this back and forth and compromising. So what is the right number is the question now. And Member Earls sounds like she's brought it to 4 per year, not delineating out the specific for legislature and specific. 4 per month, not delineating out specific for legislative time and other meeting time, but just, she's saying 4 per year for any of all of it, 4 per month. Sorry, I keep saying that, 4 per month. I mean, to speak to this amendment personally, I would say I'd rather have it be an annual amount, because then if you have a light month in August, you could use those meetings a different month. So I'd rather have it in a per year personally, but that's just my thought.
To say so.
Okay, let's go back to traffic a little bit. Let's see, we do have a motion. It does address some of the back and forth we've had. Point of order, yes, hold on. We'll get you
I still
there.
don't understand. That's my
All right,
point.
we'll get back to that.
So my
Point of order over here.
is that we are actually debating things that Member Earl has moved to strike.
That's, well,
And so the
that's
question,
okay. If she's striking it, the question is whether they should be struck.
but we're debating what they should say when the motion on the table is to remove them altogether.
Okay, correct.
Remove them all.
Do we have any discussion of, those are, your motion is strike all that language, correct?
My motion is to strike
33,
the
36.
legislative pieces in lines 30
not all
something
of it.
through 30 something, right there.
No, it's not all of it. 'Cause
And then it's just to add a legislative piece down below. Mine would be 4 per month. If someone wanted to articulate so many per year, I'm open to that.
All right,
That's what the debate is.
fair enough. Let's see, we may have no other lights. Can we put the motion back up on the board? Good thing is here, everybody wants to be engaged and go to meetings, so just take a pause to celebrate that. And get paid, remember later.
So it's me. Am I on?
Sorry? Oh, Member Klein, sorry.
I was just wondering could somebody clarify what a board member district meeting is? Is that like
One of my
They're
questions.
local.
Okay, good
Yeah.
question.
Do you know what
Vice
they-
Chair Earl?
Yeah, I actually think that need to be board members, District 1. So it probably needs to have the grammatical in there, because otherwise we don't have a district, meaning a school district, but we have a district in the state, so it probably needs to be apostrophe S. So I had another person ask about that too. I think it's grammatical.
So, grammatical clarification. Let's see, do we have the language up there?
I. Yes, I.
Okay, Deputy Jones.
Okay.
Sure. Let me just get Scott and then come back. I think he was going to maybe address this. Or is this?
Chair, if I may, just request clarification for the staff. The budget currently for board member compensation is 32 meetings per individual board member per year. Okay? So are we talking now that if I were to take each one of you, I would say I've budgeted for board member Carey to get compensated for 32 meetings per year, right?
So now we're looking at 48 potentially, right?
48 per board member per year.
Right. Well, I think that, let's see.
Well, what does
this bring us to?
Okay, just please help me understand what additional
Yeah,
means.
let's do the
In
math,
addition to the
because-
32 I've already budgeted for each individual board member? Yeah, please.
So
Okay.
I don't know that we had awareness that there is a 32 per board member, did we? I was involved in the drafting of this. This seems to require potentially four per month per board member, right?
So then.
So that's
so that
48
would-
instead of 32.
Okay, so
So
then.
that would require budgetary something or other.
So then you would need me to budget for, what's 48 plus 32? 80 meetings
Well,
per board
I
member
don't think
per
we're
year?
adding it to the 32. I think we're
Okay.
expanding it to make 48 the cap, as I understand the
Okay.
language here.
Okay, so each
Am I right?
individual board member would only be compensated for up to 48 meetings per year.
I think that's
Okay,
right under
okay.
under Vice Chair Earls. No, okay. Somebody help me out here. Okay. In addition to what then? I'm somebody who's doing the language here. Help me on the math. What would this put us to if Vice Chair Earl's motion to amend is adopted? It would authorize up to 48 total per board member in addition to what? Do we already stipulate in rule up to 32? So that's my question is, are we already authorizing, I know we've budgeted for 32.
Yes.
Do we already
We are
require in rule 32 and we're adding 48, or does this just expand it from 32?
So I don't believe that the 32 is written anywhere in this rule. What I do
Okay.
believe is that because we have 8 legislative meetings and 11 months with 2 meetings, that is where we get that whatever, and then there's a certain number of whatever, and there's a budget for 32 meetings a year per Superintendent Jones. This would add to that number about 48 meetings a year.
Okay.
No, it would add to that number 48 meetings a year per board member. Yes.
Okay.
That
And-
is,
and-
as the language, if we're going like what the language actually says, that is what it actually says in this moment.
So the math that you described a minute ago, Member Bogus, was that there are already certain legislative meetings. I'm not sure those add up to 32. Do we know what the rule already
No,
says
we're
about other meetings?
budgeted for
I
32.
understand we're budgeted for 32. What does the rule say currently about meetings that will be paid? Is that
Yeah, it's in this.
some
It's in
number?
this policy, but there's no number on it. So
I get it. So
there's a
this would
budget for up to-
control. I get it. What's the current number in there?
there's not one.
Well, we are
There's a budget
authorizing payment for
um,
legislative and board meetings, I think, correct? Does it describe the meetings that we're being paid for? Yes,
Yeah.
Deputy Jones.
So no, it does. So my understanding, based on what I've read, it doesn't explicitly say how we budgeted in the past. Where we come up with 32 meetings is you have 11 meetings, board meetings, Thursday meetings. Then you have 11 committee meetings, the 22. Then we estimate, add on, well, what could we expect you would be to correct with the legislature? There is a list of the types, when you get assigned by the chair to a particular one, we try to count those as well to come up with an estimate, and that's where the 32 is coming from. It's not explicitly stated that,
Okay.
it's 32. We just, yeah, so I'm already counting those.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I get
What
it.
we know. Okay, thanks.
So,
sir.
so built into the 32 budget are certain specified meetings that are regularly scheduled, including our regular board meetings and legislative meetings. Then we've added a fudge factor up to 32. This may or may not be adding an additional 48 on top of the 32. It might be adding 48 on top of the enumerated meetings that are already specifically built in. That's what I'm trying to get to, right? Do we know what those are? 11 plus something. I see Patty saying yes. 27. So are we trying to do 27 plus 48? Is that where we're going? I don't know. Okay, 32 included a fudge factor. We're eliminating the fudge factor and making it very explicit. So 27 plus 48 is what? 80. That seems off. This is what? 75. So I'm getting that the math would be from those already explicitly enumerated plus the new 48, we'd have 75. So we would going from 32 includes a fudge factor. Instead of a fudge factor, now we're making it clear. Yes. All right, 75. Sorry?
2 meetings a month is 24, right? Okay. Well, we've got, yeah, but we meet. Okay, so there's 22 plus the 3 meetings that we have, we have 8 meetings during the legislative session, extra meetings up on the Hill every week. Well, we have 2 meetings in January, 4 meetings in February, and then usually 2 in March.
Just for the general public, we have a math teacher here, but he's notoriously quiet over there. I'm kidding you. We're all failing at math, so maybe you can. No, we're getting there. Okay, so what does that bring us to, Chair Norton?
I already figured it out. I've been waiting for you guys.
Well,
No, you go.
I haven't been on the weeds on this one, so
29.
So you count 29 that are already
22 with 11 months,
okay.
plus 6 at the legislature, the 3 in January, 3 in February, 1 in March.
All right. So according to Chair Norton's math, between those meetings explicitly enumerated as compensatable and the number that would now be added to that, we have 29 plus 48, which is 77 or something thereabouts. All right. So let's bring this to a head. We've got some idea of what we're already being compensated for. We did have some wiggle room in that up to 32, and the motion is to expand that by specifically stating you have up to 4 per month. So the 29 plus, I guess we had 3 in there, 3 to 5 were wiggle room. Now it's explicit. You've got all these enumerated meetings for which we could already be compensated. Now we get, if this passes, 4 more per month per board member. Am I getting that right? Which is a total of 75.
Okay, so then
Right?
I still have my question.
Okay, yes, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so I understand we're talking now about 75 meetings total, but my questions include, I have additional questions. A member, and it sounds like of the ones that are proposed, and I don't know how Vice Chair Earl's amendment changes this. It sounded like some of those are discretionary with the member himself, and some of them are per the chair's direction. Is that right, Member Earl?
I don't know that any of them are chair's direction.
They're all with the member's discretion.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be that you're asked to, like, if you're asked to present a legislative session, you could count it as your as a legislative
So
meeting.
is that in addition to the
No.
75?
No.
It's
Nope.
all in the 75. Okay, that was one, so thank you for that
Yeah.
answer. My second part of that, and I appreciated the clarification on district, it is up then to the honor system for the member to decide if the members' meetings are consistent with the purposes of lines 44 through 46. Is that right?
They would have to, like they would when they attended a committee, right? They have to write down what they did. So yes.
But when it says board agenda items, I on this one, choose 1, 2, 3. If I met with attorneys from the school districts who had concerns with Rule R277123, that could be my choice of a meeting.
You could write it down, met on this
Okay.
agenda item for da-da-da-da-da. In my view, I'm not the body, right?
Right, but this is your amendment, so that's why I'm asking what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And it was similar to little I, or 3 little i's, where the meeting related to the objectives, that's pretty broad. Any of the objectives of the strategic plan that you're meeting with, that could be consistent with member choosing to attend a meeting and counting it as one of those 75. Is that also what you were thinking?
Yes, so maybe if I've attended a early literacy, full day thing recently, right? That type of a thing would count, so.
Okay, and then one more question.
Yes.
Is this on a fiscal year, per 75 per year, being a calendar year or a fiscal year?
However Scott does it. I don't know. I would assume it would be a fiscal year.
Fiscal year or calendar
So it'd
year?
be fiscal year, it'd be, yeah.
Okay, so we'd have, okay, thank you. All right, those were my primary
Okay,
questions.
thank you. We do have a
Thank
few
you.
more
May I
lights.
ask a
Let's try to
couple?
bring this to a head. Member Klein is in order, I think. Was she? Go ahead, Member
Yeah.
Klein.
So just along that same line of questions, does that include special board meetings or hearings? Or are those separate from the total number that we're talking about?
Go ahead, that's your motion.
Well, those are already, and I'm part of that maybe fudge factor that Scott had talked about with the 32, because when we have a special meeting, it's included because it's not included here, it's included up above. It's a board meeting that's called by the chair. So that is a paid board meeting. So that's part of the 32. If we're going 27, but we've had several others this year, that would be included within that. But it's already included in the code or the policy.
All right, Member Hymas, did that answer the question, Member Klein?
Yes, but like on the one related to board strategic plan, or is that just extra time spent on, by yourself or with others, with staff or other board members? Just collaborating?
Vice Chair Earl, that
I think it would have to be an actual meeting, but this is just me speaking. I think you'd have to actually indicate where you're attending and what the meeting was. So if you're just meaning you're calling up someone saying, hey, can we go have lunch and I talk about something, I just don't see that as it.
So
But-
are you saying, Vice Chair Earl, that additional meetings scheduled by others that you attend as opposed to meetings that you call to discuss? I don't know if that goes to her question. It seems to be part of a meeting is a pre-existing meeting. All right, we'll leave it at leave it at that. Okay. All right, let's see who else we have. Member Hymas. No? Yes? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. If I am seeing this correctly, we're trying to mix two different things here. What's already been happening, and then we have an amendment to say there's 4 additional per member per month.
Right.
So from what I understand, and I just want to make sure that I do understand, we are asking in this policy, we're not discussing what we've been doing for the past X amount of years, but moving forward, there's 4 additional meetings per month that have to fall within this I, double I, triple I, and potentially quadruple I meeting set, right? So anytime we call and it's up to 32, is that right, Scott or
That was
Deputy
existing.
Jones? And I don't want to bring in the math. Okay, just say no, that's fine. There's up to X amount of meetings that we have planned. And somebody said, well, we only do this many. Well, that's what up to means, right? We don't need to get fixated on a specific number. We're just trying to cover our budget or our basis and make sure that Scott budgets for things. So from what I understand on this amendment here, we're looking at adding 4 per month, which could equate to 48, but it's not like I get to have carryover meetings, right? I'm going to save all my meetings for December and have a wonderful Christmas, right? So I am for this amendment. I think it does offer some flexibility. Board members are out meeting with their communities, meeting with their LEAs, and I know that this is a public service, but I would love to see, as the work gets done, a little bit of help in that regard. So I'm going to speak for the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Member Norton, Chair Norton.
I appreciate the conversation that we've had. I think that's added a lot of clarity. I do wonder if we potentially have a section that has not yet been written that might need to be added, and that is to address such things as the difference in board-appointed responsibilities. So I see leadership burning through those 4 meetings in 4 days, oftentimes. Committee chairs have different requirements where there's additional meetings plus additional things that are happening with legislature. We have task force meetings. We have joint legislative things so I'm wondering about these additional assignments and how those could be maybe addressed as well.
Vice Chair Earl, I think
Well,
I'm hearing.
yeah,
Go ahead.
those are already addressed those are already addressed. If you're assigned something by the chair, like the state charter school board, right? That's your assignment and you attend. It already addresses that in here. That's already up above, that's already in the policy.
That's more than 75 then.
Well, it's the fudge, the 32.
I think that we figured out was part of that 27 to 32, and then we're adding the 48.
So those are
as
already
I
there.
understand it. Those are enumerated. They just weren't quantified in the other one, but they're covered. Now these are quantified, but not necessarily spelled out what they're going to be. I think we have two buckets there. Member Green.
No worries. I am actually just wondering where this is on page. It's on the last page. The advisory committee, outside committee, and task force assignments. Does that fall into the 29 or the other 48?
That's
That was
already
the
covered.
29. Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, Member Lear.
My question is to Scott, if I may, Chair.
Sure.
Deputy Jones. Part A, where does this money come from? And Part B, is there money in the budget for this? Is there money that can be found for this? Or, I mean,
Okay.
this is tripling what board members have typically been paid for. I'm not great at math, but I can see 32 in the past budgeted for, 75-ish budgeted for now. So this is tripling. Where would this money come from? And is it possible to have that money?
So Chair, to Board Member Lear's question, the money we currently use to provide compensation for board member attendance to meetings, your per diem, if some of you choose to have benefits, some of you don't, all that is state funds, right? It stays in your office budget. What I would need to know in order to answer the second question, though, is how many meetings per year do you want me to budget for individual board members, right? Because if it's 80, that's significantly going to change the budget, because as I said, right now I budget as if you're going to attend 32. Sometimes people attend more, sometimes it's less, right? And so it typically works out. But if you tell me to budget as if all of you may attend 80 meetings per year, or 75, or whatever, then I would be able to answer Board Member Lear's second question, do we have enough funds to do that?
Well, I think the point is this would be a maximum that any or all board members might approach on a
Why
month
would we
or
not?
But right, yeah. But I guess I mean if everybody did that and you had to adjust on the assumption of 75 per board member per year, do we have funding for that? Do we have to ask the legislature? I think that's the question, right?
Right.
Where would it come from? If it went to the max that was being discussed, where would that money
Where
come
would that
from?
come from? I've got one more follow-up to
Okay.
after that.
So we're going to say that yes, if you want us, if we are to budget as if a board member would, each one of you would attend up to 75 meetings per year, we have sufficient funds for that.
From internal USBE funds that
Correct.
operate
Yeah,
whatever.
they're not the flow-through funds or anything like that. You wouldn't be taking anything away from the flow-through. I mean, we might have to make some adjustments, to other
Board
components of your budget, like your travel, those types of things, but
We have it within the
yeah,
bucket.
I feel
that's-
confident that
okay.
we could, and actually, it would likely result in less carry forward if all of you were to do that. So I will attest that if you want to compensate board members for up to 75 meetings per year, that the budget can sustain that.
Great.
Okay.
And
Well,
last
another follow-up?
piece is, so this amount of money is the same regardless if you have a 1 hour meeting or 1 hour event under little 1, 2, and 3, or if you have an all-day event under 1, 2, 3. The amount of money would be proposed to be the same. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah, that would be consistent with.
We asked about doing an hourly. I asked what, but we'd have to change the whole system. That's not the way it's written in code, all of that. So that is accurate.
Okay.
So whether you did 12 hours, right?
1 day?
Oh, no, someone's raising their hand. That's what I understood.
Okay. Patty or Elise or somebody.
Okay. This is just in regards to the question of how many are currently being addressed in the policy itself. So if you scroll down on the motions doc, I took each line from the policy and the enumerated or the quantified days allowed annually under the policy as it's currently written. So these are the things that are in the policy as it's being proposed today. Then the amendment below, right, instead of the 6 would be 48. And so there are 3 categories that are not quantified in policy. And so I put at least, just to clarify.
But still, there's no difference between a 1 hour meeting and an 8 hour meeting or event under little I, little 2, little 3.
It's a flat rate, not as I read the
Flat rate,
policy.
gotcha. I just. Jeez. I needed to raise my rates.
Thank you. And thank you, Elise, for putting that clarity up there. Okay, let's see. We've got member Davis and member Straight.
I actually was going to do the same thing that Elise did in a much better way, but take all those out of policy. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So there will be 2 pieces to our compensation. The one piece that has a limit, which are the additional 48 days. That's the piece that has a limit. And then the other piece that we're compensated is status quo, where we have 22 Thursday and Fridays, 6 legislative roughly. If you, let's say, meet quarterly and at your ad hoc assignment as assigned by the chair, that's another 4. That equals 32. So what they've been budgeting so far is a pretty minimal. That means you're not meeting monthly and ad hoc. You're like quarterly meetings, and in the 32 is not included any additional meetings, committee or full, as called by the chair. All of that stays status quo, if I'm understanding, with this amendment, which is never going to be able to be 100% guaranteed numerically, but we can roughly guesstimate. 32 is a low estimate based on what we've done. And then the piece that's capped are these additional meetings, the 48 per month additional meetings, which basically per year, which doubles ish our compensation. It doesn't triple, it doubles. But 32 plus 80 is, I mean, a little more than that, but a little more than double. So I just want to make sure I understand what we're voting for.
So I think you mean 32 plus
48. The 48 is the
just for
that's right. The total sounds like would be 80.
Okay.
Correct. Member Straight.
85.
So I'm looking at the three items: board agenda items, board member district meetings, or meetings related to the objectives of the board's strategic plan. So as I look at that, that's very, very broad, and what?
Do conferences count in that? The learning?
Well, that's the thing. We go to conferences. We have USBA coming up. We have rural schools oftentimes in the summer. Where there's other things we attend. What about going to NASB or there's other travels that we do? What about caucus meetings?
You cannot pay for that because it's not an official item of the board.
Are board agenda items discussed there? Or potential board? So I think maybe there's some question there. You know, I think of my own situation. There have been times where there were two meetings in the same day, and our policy specifically limits to, if you attend 3 meetings on the same day, you can only be paid for 1 meeting, compensated. And so, yeah, this doesn't change that, but you can have a 30-minute meeting 3 days in a row, and you have three meetings. I think the way we have it set up right now with the limitations as currently set is pretty decent. I'd really like, and I've said this before, we really need to get deeper into the policy during legislative meetings, and we limit that to 2 hours, and we accomplish very little. We need to become more productive and spend possibly some more time during the legislative session to really get into the meat of what's before the legislature and giving our recommendations. So I know that we occasionally, with Davis School District, Board Member Wood and I will often attend meetings with district leaders to gain understanding of their circumstances. That's something we choose to do. We choose to come down to the legislature. I mean, even while for the first 6 months when I was on the board, I had my job as well, and if I took the day off, I had to reimburse the district for the funds which were put forward, and I had to pay for that sub. I could not be compensated both as a teacher and as a board member. We have contracts that we have to abide. I think we add 4 additional meetings a month more. I think that's too expensive. So, you know, I'm not in favor of this. I know the sacrifice and the time and the effort that goes into being on the board. I think we need to take a step back. I don't think legislators, I don't know how the legislature compensates, but if they have a town hall meeting on a day different than a legislative session, I don't think the legislature receives compensation for that, but under this, you could or would, depending on the circumstance. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you, Member Straight. Member Wood, I think?
Member Wood.
Yep.
So just to clarify, the money, the extra money would come from our carryover. Is that an accurate? Or we would have less carryover because of that.
yes,
Sorry,
yeah.
that's what
Yes.
I meant to
No,
say.
yeah.
Yes, we would have less carryover. Right now, we use carryover when we want to do extra studies, when we want to look, we need to hire additional, like I asked for money for a facilitator for our strategic plan. We asked for money to look further at our ROI investment. We use that money to invest in the system to make it better. And what we're saying is, we'd rather compensate ourselves than use the money to invest in the system to improve the work that we do. And I am concerned about that.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
clarifying question on that? A carryover fund is money that didn't get spent that was allocated, right? Am I wrong in saying that? And so what we're saying is that maybe if none of us got paid this year for anything, then we would have more carry forward fund to do other things with?
In a, Chair, if I may, in a one-time manner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we
we
budget-
have an allocation that we make every year for the budget. It's our budgeted amount, and we are carrying forward from the budget amount. I'm just trying to clarify that.
Correct. Yes.
So when we use a carry forward fund, we're actually using it on a one-time basis for things that like that were just stated, right? These
Right.
are extra things,
Correct.
but it's not part of the original budget. Okay.
Right, because, Chair, through you, we budget, then we execute your budget. Then when we get to year-end close, if we have balances, those become carry-forward balances, and they're put into your discretionary funds, and then, we proceed from there.
Okay, all right. I think we've got this ready for a vote, and I will remind us, we
I would
all
like
have a hard stop today. Do we have, we do have more. Apologize.
And they're right as you
Go
started to
for it.
speak. I'm just wondering, on this last page of the document, it does have everything kind of listed out specifically. I'm wondering if we develop a specific list though, where I don't know, we can be more specific instead of so wide open, because it seems that some of the hesitation is coming from kind of the general 1I, 2I, 3I section. But I don't know what that would look like. Right now, it's pretty general, I think.
Is the suggestion that it might be linked to a list somewhere, or that we ask staff to develop some list of potential?
Yeah, and it's just kind of a general question to the body, like as we develop this.
Yeah. And that could go to Vice Chair Earl, but it doesn't have to. Just since you're the maker of the motion, the question is whether it might be helpful to have some direction about what these 48 meetings might be. I think there is, so that it's not, it has some clarity attached to it at some point. Is that the question? Sort of.
I mean, I think we could, is that what you're asking? Beyond the 1, 2, 3, 4?
Right, I think.
The Utah Rural Schools Association, we know that is eligible for salary and travel expense. You are on that committee or whatever, and you check that off, you've done that job on that committee. Outside of that, beyond that, you have the other areas that you can attend to the interim, and that translates into the work of the board. But just the way it is, it's pretty broad.
That might help to clarify the two buckets.
And I don't know if we want that.
Those
I'm
things
just
that
putting
are
it out there.
well, that could be just a suggestion for staff as they develop it if it goes forward. We have one bucket where meetings are enumerated; they just haven't been given a number, right? And if you get that, you're already able to get compensated. Now we're saying 48. additional, what kind of meetings might those be and what they might not be, because they're already listed for compensation. That might be something that staff might use to clarify if those goes forward. Is that a suggestion we might just throw out there?
I just, it's
Dr.
not
Earl?
my amendment, but
I thought it was.
no, I think
Oh.
my amendment is just to make a few modifications. And then if we wanted to speak to greater clarity on those other items, I'm just saying we're still on the previous amendment, this is current
Yeah,
amendment.
I
but
think this was just a suggestion that
Yeah, which
if
we-
this
we
passes,
could.
there
I don't-
might be some guidance.
Yeah, that would be
issued.
great. I think if we wanted
go
additional
with it.
guidance on that, or even to maybe the strategic plan just feels too broad, right? That this was just some recommendations. Anybody can make an amendment to modify those.
All right,
So.
should we bring this to a vote then? Member Straight, did you have a final
I had
comment?
a comment too.
Correct. Brent needs a light. There we go.
Well, I think that definitely makes it more palpable from the standpoint of transparency and being clear as to what exactly is being accomplished and for what purpose. And it has a reporting element that goes directly back to the list that's verifiable and understandable. But we don't have that list. We could build that list. So I would like to make a motion that we table this until next time, where we have a list that fits in with 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, is there a second? See a second from Chair Norton. Would you like to speak to it, Member Straight? Okay. My bad. Discussion of the motion to table. Oh, Member Klein, did you have a hand up? Does this go to the motion to table?
It's just a general comment about this. I just see how this is going to play out in the media. It's going to be looked at as the board voting itself a raise, and the public has very strong opinions about how the board has done their job and whether they deserve a raise or not. So I've given, of the last 4 years, almost every waking hour to this work. And yet I've taken very small pay for it. I've gone to one conference because I don't want to use the public taxpayers' dollars any more than necessary. Almost all the work I've done has not been compensated, and I'm okay with that. But I would just caution that that's how it's going to go over, and it's not going to be a good look for the board.
Okay, thank you, Member Klein. Member Lear? To the motion to table?
I having just complained a few minutes ago about tabling an item just for an hour, in favor of tabling this. I think we need to understand very clearly what meetings would be counted when it's a $300 difference from zero, doesn't count at all, to even an hour counts. It's real money. And I would go from making $15,000 a year, which I consider a stipend, to $50,000 a year. And that seems to me a dramatic change, and I think we need to understand that better, and be more cautious in how we vote yes or no, and then what the public understands about the work the board does. Because I agree, there are many people, and Natalie's a very good example, that have spent way more hours, and Jenny's another good example, of people who've been compensated have not been compensated by all the work they've done. So I'm in favor of understanding this better. I am also persuaded by Brent's comments of this is not the legislature where all of them make a good amount of money. They can afford to be legislators. We're a body that governs teachers. There are teachers who make $50,000 a year. And I am troubled by that being a side hustle of mine. So I think we need to understand this better, and I think we need to think about it more, because it's not something that I anticipated in and I still have an amendment to propose, depending on which way this discussion goes. But I think we need to think about this a little more and calculate the difference of where this money could be used otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Further, Member Hymas.
Just a quick clarity, if my math is correct, it's about, this would increase up to 23,600 is 80 times 295. So it's a little under half that. I'm just saying, nobody's getting rich off of this work, right? And so, well, I mean, part-time teacher salary, I'd call this a part-time, maybe for some 3/4 time. As Member Klein just mentioned, she's working overtime on a full-time, you know what I mean? Nobody's getting rich off of this. So anyway, whether it goes through or not, I'm just saying the numbers are showing about 23,500.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the motion is to postpone until, excuse me, let me get it right, postpone this item until January board meeting. Seeing no further discussion, I'll just say that would allow those who are, going to be living with this to be part of that discussion. Some of us are rolling off, including myself. So I will say, as one rolling off, I support having some additional money for board members. I support people being able to do this and get compensated a little bit more. So for what that's worth, as one who has no financial interest in the outcome, I think what's being proposed is reasonable. We want folks on here that can put in that time, and would it be helpful to not make them rich, but to cover a little bit of that. So with that, let us vote on the motion to postpone. Excuse me. Member Klein?
Yes.
Member Klein's a yes. Got one more. Okay, that passes 10-5. The no votes being Member Wood, Member Bogus, Member Hymas, Member Davis, and Member Riel. So that item will be then postponed also to the January board meeting. Bogus.
So I would like to make a motion to direct staff to ensure that this policy is not in conflict with our bylaws, because it is in conflict with our bylaws in subsection Article 2, inasmuch as the audit committee is not a standing committee. And while I understand not according to our bylaws,
I think we're going to have to defer that discussion because this item has been postponed.
and I understand that, my
But
motion was
that
to
could
direct
be-
staff, when they come back with this, to ensure that it's written, that it reconciles with our
Consistent
bylaws.
with bylaw. I'll just, after we've postponed, can we do that as just a direction? Do we need to vote on it? Can we just throw it out there? I think we're just hearing we could just give the direction, unless you want to bring it to a motion. I think we can just, having what you've said can be the direction to staff of getting some nods back there. Does that work? Okay. So we'd like to make sure that whatever comes forward is consistent with bylaws. Okay. All right, back to Chair Norton.
That concludes the financial report.
Finance living up to the name. Thank you, Chair Norton.